Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show. The film is The Force. The director is Peter Nix, who's here in studio. Welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Couldn't be happier to have you here, Peter. So, first of all, your film is about the Oakland Police Department. And I dare say, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I think this helps with the setup a little bit. Oakland Police Department is really the first, I think, to have a real PR problem out there for the people to see kind of early on. Would that be an accurate depiction of what they were dealing with there?
I mean, you can take it all the way back to the 60s with the Black Panthers.
Right?
I mean, this is
that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, this is a police department that has a long and troubled relationship.
A long history.
With the community. Yeah.
Right? And of course, a lot of that was only known in that community for many, many years. It didn't seem to be permeating out to the world, did it?
I mean, we just had a different media landscape back then.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, can you imagine if we had cell phones in the 60s?
Oh, yeah.
So even so, I think there was a widespread understanding of what was going on in Oakland because the Black Panthers were so vocal
about what was happening.
Right, and so aggressive about sort of pushing back on that.
Why my grandparents were always like, we aren't going to Oakland, right? That's kind of, we're going to Disneyland, we're not going to Oakland, right? So the bad things were happening and continue. But the thing that's interesting there is they seem to get ahead of it, of kind of the change that we're starting to see now a little bit earlier than everybody else. Is that right too?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that happened is because for so many years, generations, there was challenges in this community with that relationship between the police and the community, and there were problems, civil rights violations. Right. The latest of which was in 2000 with the rioters scandal, where there was these cases of officers planting evidence and beating suspects and things of that sort. The feds came in to monitor the department, and they were forced to reform. Yeah. And so we stepped in and we really wanted to see what does that process look like, you know, what is it like to be on the inside of a department as they're going through this change. And Oakland itself was going through changes, significant growth, economic boom.
People started to want to go there, which is a big difference.
People were coming to the city.
Yeah.
There's a lot more interest in the city being safer, you know, and so the department became known as one of the most progressive departments in the country.
You know, I mean, I make light of it talking about my grandparents, but they were part of the problem. I mean, that I pointed out for the fact that it's just the way it was. The fear that was there and the racial divide that had been created there over so long is just barely starting, hopefully, to change in some direction. When you look at what you've gone through as having this perspective of through the eyes of the force, the police themselves, do you talk about the hope that they have? Do you see that there? Do you see everybody wanting the same thing at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we noticed it right away. One of the places where we spent some time initially was the police academies. We wanted to understand how are these cops being trained in this new, in this era. And it's not even a new era of police accountability. And we discovered archival footage that they showed during the academy classes from 40 years ago of them saying these same things, like we want to improve the relationship with the community. So there's been discussions about this culture change for decades.
Right. Proof's in the pudding, though. You want to see it.
Well,
right?
You know, you quickly see that in the young recruits there's a lot of idealism. And one of the mayors, the new mayor, when we were filming, a new mayor came in her first day. She spent going around the room asking all the recruits, "Why are you here? Why do you want to be a cop?" And it was really surprising hearing the stories of why these people were there, young, 18, 19, 20. My brother was killed on these streets, and I wanted to get in here and try to make a difference so that next person's brother wasn't killed. So idealism and bright-eyed, and we were surprised by that, from the recruits all the way up to the command staff.
That's amazing. Well, we have a clip, and then I want to talk some more. It is The Force. Let's check it out. All right. So we see this right from, I mean, this is in their grill, so to speak. You're right in their face.
Yeah.
And from the perspective of the law enforcement side of things, how hard do you find to tell that story from that perspective? Because it is a different viewpoint than almost everyone else, of course, has taken over the last few years.
Sure. I mean, first of all, we felt it was like really important at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Now, you see on your Facebook feeds and in Twitter, like little bits of video flying around of a police interaction.
Right.
Often without context, though. People get an emotional reaction to that without understanding really what led up to that incident. So what we wanted to do was really take the audience in an immersive way and help unpack sort of the context around how officers make these decisions, the circumstances in which they operate.
The speed at which they have to operate.
Yeah,
right?
The speed at which they, this is a big, broader discussion about sort of the systemic sort of lack of education, access to healthcare, poverty that's sort of, affected these communities for generations, that's led young people to not make great choices to get into interactions with the police, and the police are left with the responsibility of managing that. And we are asking, what we're asking is, are they doing their job appropriately? And so we wanted to understand and get that perspective, that intimate perspective, and particularly the body cam, because these body cam, now we live in this world of like alternate truth, right?
Right.
And so everybody sees different things in the same piece of evidence, and so we wanted to get a sense of, how reality is perceived in different ways from different points of view.
All right. How much criticism have you taken from the community? Do you get that occasionally for looking at this from that other perspective? Because I think of, say, for instance, you remember the man who was out in the African American community, came to the police and started hugging them. You remember that?
Yeah,
he just took an immense amount of grief from his own community.
Yeah.
Have you had that criticism?
We didn't do any sort of outward PR as we began the project. We didn't go out there and talk about what we were trying to accomplish. We kind of kept a low profile, and really our first introduction to the community was because right when we began filming the Ferguson decision, Darren Wilson's, he wasn't indicted, and there were weeks of protests in the city, and we were hopping out of police cars with our cameras because we were embedded, and. It was a really surreal experience for me because, I'm from this community, and I'm a progressive guy. I've got a lot of progressive friends, and people saw me getting out of these police cars, and so our pictures were being taken. We were being trolled on Twitter. Who are these guys? Yeah. They started trying to create narratives around who we were and what we were doing, without really understanding who we were and what our intent was, and so that was kind of frustrating and disheartening at the beginning, but we just tried to block it out because we knew we were in it for the long haul, that this was the beginning of a 2-year process of us really trying to understand this department. Eventually, we made our way into the lives and perspective of the activist community. And I don't think the community really fully understood. They're just starting to understand what this is because the reviews from Sundance have come up, but this thing hasn't screened in Oakland yet, so that it remains to be seen what kind of conversations and what kind of reaction, we as the tellers, the storytellers, get from the community.
I have one last question for you, and then we'll talk about where people can see this. One of the things I, as a journalist, noted early on, and I had to keep asking this question because I needed an answer for it, which was the shoot to kill, as opposed to shoot to put somebody down.
Yeah.
Was that the problem for you independently, or is there another one that you can think of that was more pertinent to you? Did you have a question that you needed answered that way?
It's one of the most difficult questions, and I think it's what's divided the country. This question of how and when and why to use force in an environment that the cops are in. And it did open our eyes. I kind of understood that these situations are complex. I didn't come in as an activist sort of filmmaker with a sort of definitive, like, I've decided that
I'm going to prove this right.
Yeah, I'm just going to prove it, that these cops are, homicidal maniacs, and there's a scene in the film where the Academy class is debating. They're shown a body cam, a dashboard video of a shooting, a killing, and they're asked, "What would you do?" And when you watch the video, it looks like cold-blooded murder, but then you see it sort of unpacked, and you see that there's a disagreement in this group of young recruits over what they would have done. And some believe that the use of force was justified, some believe it's not. When you watch it on the screen, it's so chilling, not just because the man is killed, but because of the number of shots are used. But when you start hearing the justifications, oh, what did he have? We told him to stop. He kept moving. He was reaching. He could have had a gun. He could have been high on PCP. You know, we fire pea shooters. 13 shots may not stop somebody. It's just shocking to think, like, in these incidents, all of those considerations, you basically have a split second to run through all that and make your decision. And you know, the consequences are great, either for that person's life, your life, or the lives of bystanders in the environment. So that was really kind of mind-bending to sort of consider that and scale that out to all the police, you know, civilian interactions that take place on a daily basis in America.
The thing that I thought was difficult for a lot of people to understand is the fear. You don't know that fear until you're in that position.
Absolutely, but the thing is, like, all these interactions are different.
Yeah.
So you have, like, this one, the guy did have a weapon. It turned out to be a knife, but they didn't know that initially. Then you have situations like Laquan McDonald in Chicago, where the guy's like, doesn't seem to be a threat at all. He's walking away from the officers, and he's shot in the back. So there's such a diverse, you know, nature of these interactions and circumstances. What seems to be happening is we're flattening them all down into sort of one category, which is sort of unjustified. And that's why I think this divide has gotten wider between people in the police community, or those who support the police, and those in the activist community who just want to, you know, say, whose side are you on? Because there's no nuance to sort of the, you know, dissecting of these incidents.
Well, I want to thank you for getting out there and trying to unpack it for us. It's an important story. It's The Force. It's in the U.S. documentary competition. Where can we see it?
It's at Sundance. We got a showing at the Mark today.
Excellent.
Then we'll be at the Redstone on Friday and at the Rose Wagner on Saturday in Salt Lake City.
Oh, good. I'm glad some people in Salt Lake are going to see this too. Even there, we've had some of these same sort of situations, and many of them in just the last few months. So talking about this, getting that dialogue started, unpacking things important. Peter Nix, thank you. He's been filming since he was 12 years old. I don't know there's too many people I'd trust more to get some images of what is really going on in our society as we start to face some of these very difficult choices, ones that aren't we all glad we don't have to make. And for those guys and girls who do, we really want to start to understand a lot more. We've got a lot more coming up here on the Mountain Morning Show as well. We'll be back right after this.